monotonicity in other math classes. So applying that to voting methods, the monotonicity criterion means that you can't make somebody lose an election by increasing their votes, or vice versa. You can't make somebody win an election by decreasing their standing on a vote. So it seems to make sense, right? So, like, let's say Bailey. I haven't done the numbers yet, but let's say Bailey wins this election. If we were to switch Bailey with Adams and move them up on this set of ballots, Bailey got first and Adams got second. That might mess up a voting method so that Bailey loses. By Bailey going up in a ballot, actually made them lose, and that doesn't seem fair, right? If Bailey originally won, and if we go back and realize that we had two of the places reversed here, we miscalculated. Bailey was actually supposed, and all of a sudden Bailey loses. That shouldn't happen because Bailey should have only increased their standing. So that's the monotonicity. That's a violation of the monotonicity criterion. So just one last example. Let's say Grant lost this election, and then we went back and we said, oh, whoops, we actually calculated as if Grant got first choice in these ballots. Grant was supposed to get second choice, so we moved them down. And then all of a sudden, by moving them down, Grant wins the election. That's a violation of the monotonicity criterion. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. You can Google something online. There's some analogies on that too. You can always message me too. I'd be happy to help. But suppose the election results were announced, but then because of an error, all votes had to be recast, and all the voters who voted for Adams, Bailey, Grant changed their preferences to Grant, Bailey, Adams. Okay, so all the voters who voted Adams, Bailey, Grant. So this first one, they changed it to Grant, Bailey, Adams. So Grant went up and Adams went down. Determine the winner using plurality method without elimination. Does the result of the revote violate the monotonicity criterion? So plurality, just a reminder, is where you just look at the first place finishers. So let's do it before we make that reversal, before we switch Grant and Adams in this first ballot, okay? Adams, Bailey, and Grant. With the plurality method, we're just going to look at the first choice votes, 68 plus 79. Adams gets 147 votes. Bailey gets 130 votes. And Grant gets 83 votes. Okay, and so now after the switch, before we go on, Adams wins, right? Because Adams, with the plurality method, Adams has the most votes. Don't need to get above 100. We don't need to get above 50%, because it's just the plurality method. We're not doing elimination or anything like that. Okay, but they switched. Now all of a sudden, Grant, they said, was going to be first here. Grant is first, then Bailey, then Adams. So now Grant has the 68 plus 83. So 68 plus 83. Now Grant has 151 votes. I think you can see what's happening here, right? Bailey still has the 130. Nothing changed there. And Adams dropped to having just 79 votes because of this column. Because, again, we're saying this is what happens after you switch Adams and Grant. So that means Grant is now the winner, okay? Grant went up in standing. Does it violate the monotonicity criterion? So that's really tricky. So think about what happened. Adams won, but then when we switched the votes, Adams went down. So that means Adams now loses. That is okay. That is the monotonicity criterion. The monotonicity criterion is that thing that just doesn't make sense in our head. Like if a person goes down in a ballot, they should only have a greater chance of losing, okay? But if a person lost and they dropped on one of the sets of ballots and they still lost, that makes sense. So in other words, Grant was losing before. Grant went up in 68 of the ballots, so Grant was winning. That checks off the monotonicity criterion. Does it violate the monotonicity criterion? No. We need to determine the winner after the switch was made. So Grant was our winner. Okay, so just watch out for that on your other questions. Remember, monotonicity means if a person wins an election, but then that somebody like maybe one set of ballots switches their vote so that they increase their standing, and then the person all of a sudden loses, that violates the monotonicity criterion because increasing on a ballot should only mean your chances of winning go up.